DCI Music Video, the leader in music instruction and the first company to release instructional music video, brings you the best.
Oh, yeah. I like the part about playing a little phrase and then leaving space, and I can hear how the drums would fill that in.
Yell at everybody every time you say something, so sometimes if you did, you'd frighten them. I think the same thing musically.
DCI Music Video, the first in instructional music video.
That was called Lakeside Shuffle. And I think a thing to note right here is sort of how I try to think about building grooves for songs and parts for songs and things like that. And something that I started doing long time ago, which really helped me to develop a lot of vocabulary on the instrument, was to never repeat myself from tune to tune. If I had a whole bunch of tunes to learn, I would really try to come up with something different in each section of every tune, so that each section had its own sort of signature type of groove, I guess is what you could say. And so I would really try, so I got into doing this when I was with the Tower of Power. I'd really try to orchestrate a groove that really fit the section of the tune, listening to the bass line and the melody and everything that sort of was going on at that time, and try to really build a part that supported everything and touched on all those elements, all those things that were going on. You know, that doesn't always work in every situation, but I think that if you think more in terms of a part that you could build, and then as you're building the parts, have them all sort of relate somehow, maybe with the way that you use the cymbals, or just a thread of something that carries from one section to the next. And then, of course, you tie those together with fills or however. But really try to think of those things as separate things that you want to try to put together that makes it all different. And after a while of doing that, it really makes you think, really makes you develop, dig down, sort of, I guess, dig down inside of where you are musically to try to come up with all these different things. And it's really challenging, and it really will help you to build vocabulary on the instrument. This Lakeside Shuffle tune really is in the halftime 6/8 kind of style. You know, I guess you could say it could be a halftime shuffle, it could be a lot of different things. The way that I chose to approach it was try to have the element of the Cuban style 6/8 in the patterns. So that sort of was in there because there's percussion, you know, in the tune, and just to have that flavor in there, I really like that a lot better than, you know, the standard halftime shuffles, you know, that everyone does. So the first pattern that I play I play quarter notes with this hi-hat with my left foot. I'm playing a 6/8 clave pattern, which I'll show you on this hi-hat, and then I'm playing the snare sort of in the halftime sort of style. So it would sound like this. Now, the two hi-hats together make up a busier hi-hat part, which would sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now when I add the other parts to it, it fills all that in, and again I use all the unaccented snare notes to sort of give texture to, you know, these two things here. So you're going to get the tonality of almost like another hi-hat sound, a third hi-hat tonality in the middle of all this. And it makes a really nice musical kind of a sound. Let's see if I can do it. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Like so. Now, the choruses and the verses and all that pretty much are based on that type of thing. Again, you can play like what I do in the chorus of the song is I take the hi-hat part over here that's playing that 6/8 clave, I move it over to the bell of the cymbal, kind of opens everything up because it's a chorus, you want it to be bigger, and it, again, because it's based off the same part, it keeps the thread of everything going, but then you have the element of the cymbal adding to, you know, the bigness of the section there. Then we get into the solo section. That's where everything starts to change a little bit. A few months ago, or actually a few weeks ago, I went to see the Nigerian Dance Company, and they had a guy playing. There was, of course, a troupe of dancers, and then their band, which was bata drums and other percussion. That was the band. It was all drums, and it was really, really great. And there was a guy that was playing a stick part, and his role in the ensemble, as he had, basically was playing time with sticks, a lot of different stick type of patterns, and everything pretty much was around 6/8 type of stuff. Really, really interesting. And a pattern that he played, which I based this section off of, sounded like this. I'll play it on the rim. I'll play quarter notes with the hi-hat, and then I'll play the pattern on the rim of my snare, and you can hear what it sounds like. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now again, I'm saying 6/8, and really we're in 4/4, so it's really 12/8. But all these patterns, the base of it is 6. So that's when I refer to that, that's really what I'm talking about, is kind of the basic part that it is, the thing that it comes from. Really, this is all, I count it all in 4/4. So that was the basic stick part that he played. Then he added to it another stick part, which sort of wove around this one. And so let's see, what sounds could I use? Can we use this bell here? Which bell? Use this one. And then you can hear both sounds, both parts, how they work together. And again, I'll play the quarter notes here. So it sounds like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. So in the solo section, I begin by playing that part over here with hi-hat, this hi-hat, rim of the snare, and again quarter notes here, and also adding a bass drum to it. Sounds like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. As the thing evolves, in the next maybe 8 to 16 bars or whatever, I move it to my left hand to this hi-hat and play still playing the stick part that I was playing across the snare. I move it to the hi-hat and then play a snare accent, which is part of the left-hand part. So really, the same parts are going on. I'm just now starting to move them around to different sounds of the kit. And so it would sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. The next step after that, and actually this next thing I'm going to is stated a little bit earlier before the whole thing solo section starts as a little, I guess a 4 or 8 bar interlude before the saxophone solo. In the saxophone solo as it develops, after I've gone through these 2 sections, the next thing that I do is I move my right hand from this hi-hat to the bell. And I play the first note that's of the bell on the bell pattern I play on this tom right here, this right the number 2 tom. You can put it any place, but that's where I put it. The left hand is playing the hi-hat with the snare, so it's just the evolution. The part's kind of evolved here from the small sounds with the hi-hat and stick across the rim to then adding the snare, now to the bell and the toms, and now it's pretty full-blown. But if you take the first note out of the bell pattern, that's going to give you that tom there. So I'll start with the bell pattern and the hi-hat, play this rhythm, add the tom to it so you can hear what it sounds like. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now when you do that, you're still playing the same thing rhythmically, but because you take the one note off of the bell and put it on the tom, to me that makes it even funkier because you're sort of removing some notes, and it gives the illusion of a whole other part is being played, but it really isn't. All you're doing is just moving a note from here to here. Same rhythm, same thing is happening, same part. So let me play you the whole full part now, and you can hear what it sounds like. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's pretty much what the tune. Oh, I forgot one thing. At the end, after all the melody again is stated, I go into like a backbeat sort of shuffle, playing a shuffle rhythm on the cymbal, playing quarter notes, unison quarter notes with both feet, okay, and then sort of a 2 and 4 pattern on the snare, and filling in all the notes in between here with unaccented notes. So it gives it like a triplet sort of a feel. And that sounds like this. 1, 2, 3. So very basic. I'm sure there are a lot of type patterns like that you've heard before. Probably have a few that I've not a sticking or two that I haven't heard. But anyway, that's what that song is all about. Another thing that's really important to me, with respect to the drums and how they appear in the music, is the sound of the drums. To me, the drum set is more than just the snare, tom, and kick. It's the cymbals. It's all of the sounds that you integrate into the drum set to make the kind of music that you want to make. Years ago, when I used to do clinics with Roy Burns, he would tell me that the more the more different sounds that you had in your cymbal setup made it more musical. Because if you have 5 of the same cymbal, it's certainly not near as musical as having 5 cymbals with 5 different sounds. And really, that's, I think, what you have to have in a drum set that is really sonically complete. You want to have cymbals that have a good range of high to low and will convey how you perceive the drums, as how the drums should be. And I think it's really important that the drums and the cymbals are together. I said that before, but You really have to view it that way. And all the cymbals have to be able to be well integrated. The toms, for instance, and the cymbals, if you hit them together, has to be a sound that that's compatible. I think tuning is really important. It took me years to learn how to tune drums. This is, not a lesson on tuning, but certainly there are things available that you can study to learn how to do it. Basically, the way that I do it with the toms is both heads are the same pitch, top and bottom. I use a thicker head on top and a thinner head on the bottom. The thicker head gives me a nice stick sound, a thick stick sound. The bottom head gives me a lot of tone, a lot of resonance. When I tune both heads to the same pitch, and it's the right, and they're, excuse me, both heads to the same pitch, it really opens the sound of that drum up. If you want to make a drum sound smaller, then tune it either too tight or too low. And if you keep each drum within its range, tuning-wise, you get the biggest sound out of the drum. When I was associated years ago with the Rogers Drum Company, there was a guy there named Jim Gandulia who was doing all of their research and development. And he told me, if I want my toms really to sound right, that I should think about having all the sizes be 2 inches apart or equidistant apart. It could be, 3 inches. You could have 10, 13, and 16. Here I have 10, 12, and 14. So with that, it really gives me the opportunity to have a real nice spread from high to low. Sometimes I'll add an 8 on this end and a 16 on this end. So 8, 10, 12, 14, and 16. Now, if you're going to use the 10, 13, and 16, which is a really terrific spread right there, you can really get that 13 right in the middle so that you have a real nice, even tuning from, the highest drum to the lowest drum. It always amazes me, and I hope I don't offend anyone by saying this, it always amazes me that all the drum sets that come out, and I don't know who thought of this, is that you always have a 12, a 13, and a 16, and you can never get the 13 right, because if you do, you tune it so that it's out of the way of the 12, then you tune it below its range, and it doesn't work with the 16. And so one of these drums in here on the top or in the bottom is not going to sound right. And it's really, I believe, for that reason, that the drums are not the correct sizes so that you can get a nice spread from high to low. With my bass drum, I have a piece of foam rubber that goes all the way around the inside of the drum that touches both heads, and so it gives me a real nice fat open sort of sound, but at the same time takes a lot of the harsh ring out of the drum. So I still get an ambient sort of sound out of it, but at the same time a real hard thud. I like a bass drum, a beater that has a hard surface, like a hard plastic or real hard felt, so that I get a really nice whack on or a nice point on the attack of the sound. Snare, I like the coated ambassador on the snare, and then the bottom snare head, there on the bottom of the drum, I take that and I tune that, tighten it so that it's just like a tabletop. It's really, really tight. And that gives me a nice snap on the snare. Then I can tune the top head to whatever tension I like. And then when I get the tension just right, I take 1 or 2 lugs and I detune the snare slightly, detune those lugs slightly, so that I can get a really, that gives me a lot of depth out of the drum, especially if I'm using a piccolo snare, which are thin drums, and you tighten them up, and you get a nice crack on the top, but then the thickness is gone. So if you detune 1 or 2 lugs, there's really no telling how much, maybe 1 or 2 turns, it will drop the pitch of the drum down and still keep the top nice and tight so that you get a real nice crack on it. Also with the toms, if you tune the tom both heads to the same pitch and then detune 1 lug, you'll get a nice pitch bend on the end of the sound, which I think is really nice for recording. Again, whatever, like I use bells and, you know, blocks sometimes and other kinds of, you know, sounds. Again, make it so that all the sounds kind of are compatible. If you're going to pick several bells, make them to be different pitches and maybe slightly different, you know, brightnesses to them. And I think that's, you know, all of those things really help in terms of, you know, making the drum set appear as musical as possible, you know, in any setting that you choose. Okay, that was the box, and as you could see, the tune went through a lot of different changes, and I think there are 5 or 6 different grooves that I play during the course of the song. We start with sort of a section where there's fills, and the thing I want to say about the fills, I'm not going to play them, but sort of how I approached this section was like it's a combination of orchestrated parts and improvised parts. I sort of use that theme throughout all the tunes and pretty much all the time, you know, playing in any kind of music. The fill section, I tried a lot of different ways. I tried improvising a lot, and it really didn't work as well. So what I did is I orchestrated a fill. And as a matter of fact, it comes up where there's 4 fills that I have to play, pretty extensive, you know, showy ones. And so what I did is I just orchestrated it. I figured it out, and I made it so it was the same all the time. And then the other sections, you know, there's little variations and things during the solo sections, the keyboard solo. There's a basic part that I work off of, but then again, I sort of improvise around that. So everything else pretty much is basic parts where I improvise a little bit on those themes, but the section where there's the fills, that is the same all the time. Then the only variable is, you know, it really is my ability to make the fill happen all the time. So, and of course, it takes a good amount of practice, and then you have to commit these things to memory. But I think it works really well, because if it's a section of the tune where it's really exciting and you want the fill to match the mood that's being created right there, then orchestrating the fill is really great. Of course, there's certain drummers, I don't even have to mention their names, probably these guys, you know, certain guys don't have to do that. But I think that for I think it's good, makes good musical sense to orchestrate something right there and think in terms of a part as opposed to just trying to play a solo through it all the time. And I think that works really well. The first groove that I'm going to play is more, I guess you could say, kind of in the reggae-ish type of style. That was the first thing I thought of when I started putting grooves to the sections of music. And that first one starts like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. So in this groove, I'm playing the hi-hat on beats 1 and 3 with my foot, and then the bass drum's playing on 2 and 4. Like the reggae style, it's really not a reggae part, but that's because the bass drum is on 2 and 4, it made me think that way. So I'll play it again a little bit slower, and now because I'm using my foot along with the hi-hat being played with the stick, you also get a different tonality out of the hi-hat, makes it a little more musical sounding. So again, I'll play it a little slower, and it sounds like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Like so. The next section where there's a definite tempo change, I guess you'd say that it's more like it modulates is really what it does. It goes from 4/4 to 6/8. And then begins a whole series of like 6/8 type of grooves based on more of the Cuban style of 6/8. The first one being this particular pattern. I'm playing the clave here with my right hand on this small bell. Then the left hand is outlining all the notes in that clave pattern, and it sounds like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. So to that, I start, then I add bass drum and some hi-hat footnotes, or open hi-hat, things like that. Sounds like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. When it moves from this to the next, I don't know how to describe this. As the music is evolving, the next section, I play basically the same type of pattern with my hands, and I move over to the bell and my cymbal, because everything, it's a big ensemble section, everything's kind of opened up. So I add another bass drum note, but again, keeping it in the 6/8 style. The right hand is still playing the same thing that I was playing on the small bell. The left hand is going back and forth now from the closed hi-hat to the snare. And so that sounds like this. 1, 2, 3. Again, as things are moving on, the next section after the keyboard solo begins a section where it's drum solos. And the first part of it stays in the 6/8 style, and on the recorded track is a conga solo. So the part that you're playing, or that's being played along with the conga solo, sort of supports that. I keep the clave going on this big bell that I have here on the bass drum. I add a tom to it, change up the bass drum slightly. It's sort of, I guess, it's a hybrid of something that I heard someone else do, I guess you could say, is how I got to it. And also listening to hand drum parts. Again, all these things that I'm putting together are based on authentic forms, but then again, they're hybrid. You just take the things, the traditional forms or a basic idea, and then you develop it into something else. You start inventing things. And that's kind of what, the style of playing that I like, is where you're able to invent a lot of things. Take a basic idea and move it around in a lot of different ways. And I think it really serves the music in a real interesting way when you do that. So this pattern that goes behind the conga solo sounds like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. After this comes a drum solo in 6, and I think that goes on for 8 bars, 16 bars, something like that, I can't remember. And then there's a clave figure that you play that introduces a rumba section. And in this section, the hand drum parts are playing wawanko, where the beginning of it, I think the first 8 bars, the drums are playing a basic type of a songo, rumba type of a part, while there's a conga solo going on. After that, there's a drum solo for I can't remember how many bars. And it sort of builds in that way. So the songo part sounds like this. I'm using my hi-hat, playing the basic time, the quarter note time over here, like so. and all the other parts are between my snare and this hi-hat. Now, something else I forgot to mention here too is now we've gone from 6/8 to now cut time. Okay, we're going from the 6/8 to the Wawanko section, which is more of a straight ahead 4. How can I describe this? You have a 6/8. I'll play quarter notes here, and I'll play the 6/8 clave, then switch to 4/4, so you can sort of hear how it works. And basically, the clave is going to stay the same, but you're going from a triplet feel to it's in cut time, so an 8, rolling sort of an 8th note type of feel, okay? And it would sound like this. Start with the quarter notes. I'll add the clave in 6. So it's a very subtle difference, but it's there because you're going from triplets to straight 8s. Now, when I'm playing the songo pattern, I'm not playing that clave figure like I was doing in the 6/8 pattern, but it's in there, and you can hear it in the accompanying parts in the track. So let me play this the songo part to accompany the Wawanko section, and it goes like this: 1, 2, 3, 4. After this comes a improvised drum solo over the Wawanko section. Then it goes back to 6/8. And you'll notice in the track that I go from playing the straight 8s when we're in cut time, so it feels like it's 16ths, but really it's counted in 8th notes. But you can still, it's cut time, you still count 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 and a 2 and a 3. So that's the transition that's going to be going on, the 8th notes in cut time to the 6/8, which is the triplets. Now, there's a setup figure that takes you from the cut time into the 6/8. You can hear that on the track. And then the figure, again, is back into the 6 with the clave on the bell and all of that. Now, a different pattern that I play towards the end, which I'll play for you, and then pretty much that wraps up all of the, the different patterns and different things that went on in this piece. I use the bell. I'm playing quarter notes with my foot, and actually unison quarter notes, both feet, and then outlining the bell pattern with my unaccented snare while playing more of a halftime sort of a feel. You'll hear what it sounds like. It goes like this: 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, that takes care of it, the box. That was Cobra. Cobra is done in the fusion style, and a lot of things can be done with songs like this, because that style, as you know, is pretty free. A lot of different things that you can create within the different sections of the tunes. And in this particular song, because I guess it's length and there's so many things in it, there's a number of grooves here. I'm going to just look at my notes for a second and count the number of grooves that there are in this thing. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different different grooves that come up over the course of the song. And you have your A and B sections and all of that, solo sections. So really, in keeping with sort of the idea that I have of having different grooves for all the sections, if you have a long piece, you have a lot of different things that you have to remember. That's kind of, I guess you could say, the downside to that, if there is one. But still, it makes things really work well musically. If you can think of a lot of different parts to play and really rehearse a lot of different options for yourself. Then, as you're comfortable, you can mix and match things, you can move parts around, and again, using also the concept of orchestrating parts. Some sections are more improvisational. There's a drum solo in this tune. You're not going to orchestrate that. This, it's just, pretty much all blowing in that section. But I think the verses, choruses, you want to think of two different sections for that. If you have like a solo section, not a drum solo, but like you're backing up like a soloist, you want to think maybe in terms of having a different part for that, so that you have something to work off of. You might not stay there, but at least you have something different to go to. Then maybe all your bridges and all that, you have something else. So there's a lot of things to think of, but I think the whole idea really serves the music really well. The basic part to this works off the whole idea of two hi-hats. The left hand pretty much stays in this area, moving back and forth from the left hi-hat to the snare, or sometimes staying just on the snare. The right hand is playing sometimes a bell, or hi-hat number 2 over here, or the bell of the cymbal, or the open cymbal. But again, that whole concept of moving your hands around. If you split the drum set in half, you got your right hand able to work this side of the drum set, and then you have your left hand able to work this side of the drum set. So if you think of the drum set in terms of only this, where you have your right hand over your left hand in the traditional way, or of course if you're left-handed it's the opposite, then you're really limiting yourself. So the second hi-hat over here has really enabled me to open up my whole playing concept and get a lot more colors and things into the grooves. I can put a lot more into the parts, so that there's just a lot more music coming from the drum set, as opposed to just a beat that has, a static sort of drum beat all the time. Part number 1 pretty much follows the bass line of the song, and I'll play kind of what the basic thing is. It changes a little bit in the middle, but this is pretty much what the basic part is. Here, and it sounds like this. 1, 2, 3. Now, you'll notice that using the two hi-hats makes a really interesting effect, a sort of a stereo effect in the drum set. And now also another thing to remember with this too is I have different sizes in the hi-hats, and it really makes a real difference. These are a lot smaller. These are 12s over on this side, and I have 14s here. You can do it any way you want. Switch them around if you want. Put the small ones here and the big ones over here. It doesn't matter. I think, though, that the point is that you have the two tonalities happening. You have this different pitch over here and all the different variations of the hi-hat sound when you use the shoulder and the tip and all that. Then you have this hi-hat here, the shoulder, tip, all those different variations of sound. You have your left foot sound that the hi-hat makes. Plus, you have the whole texture of the unaccented notes on your snare. So really, there's a lot of musical things going on. If you can coordinate all of this stuff, it really takes a lot of time to think out a playing concept for yourself. I really don't think that you really get into the really great areas of your playing until you've been in it for a while, because there's so much to it, so many different things to study. You have to really look into yourself and really see what it is that you're about musically. What is it that you want to say? I always think of it in terms of do you have a theme for yourself? And for me, when I was 17 years old, I decided the kind of player that I wanted to be. And pretty much that has stayed the same throughout my whole playing career. The type of player that I wanted to be at 17 is the same type of player that I want to be today at 47. So all that means is that I like what I am musically. And all the different things that you bring into that just take years to master. All the different styles. There's just so much to it. And it's impossible for you to learn all of that, to become all of that in, when you're 25 years old. You can be great when you're 25, don't get me wrong, but you can be really great when you're 57 years old, 67 years old. Some of the great drummers today, when you listen to Louis Bellson play today, Louis Bellson, to me, today is better than ever. I heard him recently. Recently in San Francisco, and he was just wonderful. But that's because he's really into it, and he knows what he's about musically. He doesn't try to be anything other than that. And that's what you have to do. You have to figure out where you're at musically, and then stay with that, and focus on the strengths that you have, and really cultivate all of that in your playing personality. Your weaknesses as a player, just keep working at all those things, because ultimately you get lots further by staying with the thing. And all of the people that maybe your competitors, right, that maybe don't have the stamina that you have, ultimately will fall by the wayside, and you'll still be there in the end. And that's sort of what you want to do, is you want to develop staying power. And to do that, you have to love the instrument, and you have to love learning. I think that the love of learning is what can really keep you, the fire that you have for the passion for this, really at a really high level. All the great players love the instrument, and it's your love for it that sort of propels you through the whole thing. And just so much great stuff to learn. I mean, I just sit here and we talk about it. It's really great. It's a lot of fun, very challenging, and of course, keeps you off the streets and all the other things, too. The second section of this song, where we're using the two hi-hats, now I'm going to move to the cowbell. I'm going to use move the right hand over here to this bell. Left hand is playing this hi-hat and snare, and it sounds like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. The next section after that, you use your ride cymbal. And on this particular section, I move from my left hand, move my left hand from this hi-hat, and I'm playing both hands on the same cymbal. So I'm playing the bell of the cymbal here with this hand, and then with this hand, I'm playing in the open part of the cymbal. I'm playing a pattern between those two areas, and then the backbeat, I'm playing on this tom. The left foot now switches to playing eighth notes, and it sounds like this. 1, 2, 3. The next thing that it moves into from there is a solo section. Or actually, well, it's not really a solo section. It's like some sort of chorus that is used, stated later in the song and used as a solo section for the keyboards. And it's a longer pattern. So this is a 2-measure 4/4 pattern, and it sounds like this. Again, using the 2 hi-hats, the stereo hi-hat effect. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Now we're getting into the keyboard solo. The groove for the keyboard solo, again, everything sort of opens up, and it's the same bass line as is in this chorus, but I shortened the pattern. Instead of a 2-bar pattern, I just play a 1-bar pattern. Sometimes I change it. You know, these particular tracks I use for clinics and things, so I've changed it several times, and you know, it's pretty improvisational, but here's a basic part that works on the section. 1, 2, 3. And again, I was moving the pattern around because it really is kind of an improvised part right there. But the basic bass drum and snare drum pattern was pretty much how what I work off of. Then the ride cymbal pattern can change a lot. You can, you know, move things around any way you want. It doesn't. You can play straight eighths if you want. You can play quarter notes. I mean, really anything would work, I think, in that section as long as it's just a nice steady groove. The final different section that I want to show you is, again, over that same bass pattern that's used in the keyboard solo. And this is a concept that, again, that I got from Gary Chafee. Gary is, you know, one of the great players and teachers of, you know, our age. He's just you know, a wonderful talent, and has put together a lot of really incredible, you know, things on the instrument. Again, this sort of approaches kind of his linear style of playing, and what I've done is I've taken 2 bars of 4/4, and I'm basically playing 3 9/16 measures and 1 5/16 measure, okay? That gives me 32 16th notes. I know it's kind of a goofy sort of a math equation, but you know, 9 times 3 is 27 and 5 is 32, so you have your 2 bars of 4/4, and that's how it repeats. And the basic 9 pattern sounds like this. Now I'm using the bell, and in the right hand, I'm using the hi-hat with the left hand and also with the snare. So I'm going back and forth and playing all the unaccented notes over on the hi-hat, all the accented notes on the snare. And the pattern sounds like this. Actually, I'll play you the 2-bar pattern. And it's just 2 measures of 4/4. And it sounds like this. 1, 2, 3. I think that I should play this pattern for you and sort of break it down, at least as best as I can here. And I'll first start by playing you what the 9 is, the 9/16 pattern, and sort of explain to you kind of what it is, or show you what it is. If you take 2 paradiddles, right, which is 8/16 notes, and say if you just add a bass drum at the end, that gives you the 9/16 notes. So what I've done is you string 3 of those together and fill the remaining notes with a pattern of 5/16 notes. And it's exactly what I did to make it work. The basic 9 pattern would sound like this. And I'll do it real slow so you can hear what it sounds like. And then I just repeat this 3 times, okay? And so I'll just count slow in 4, and then you'll hear where it is, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4. That's what it sounds like. And then you can put 2 of those together. Then 3. All right, so that was the 3 9s. Now we'll add 5 more notes to it, and that gives you the complete cycle of the 2 bars of 4. 3 9s and 5. And I'll start at tempo, and then I'll slow it down, and you can hear what the whole thing sounds like, okay? Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. And again, keeping in mind with this whole idea that we've talked about, sort of the theme throughout all these grooves, is that you have to make sure that you maintain that low stick height on all those unaccented notes because of the really, really nice texture that it creates between all your accented notes. Okay? So that's Cobra. Okay, in that last piece, it pretty much was based on a style of one of my drummer was very big favorite of mine, Clyde Stubblefield, played with the James Brown Band years ago and played on many of James Brown's hit records. And really the whole essence of that song was one groove, and just play one groove. You can, now there's two grooves that I use in the piece. During the flute solo in the middle, I think we went to the 4-chord, and then I play a pattern up on the ride cymbal, and some other snare bass thing that goes along with it. But really, the whole concept of that is to play the same groove that you play in the beginning at the end. It's the same thing all the way through. One groove, and then you just, you base everything off of that. And it's a really, really great concept. I think if you are going to study, you want to learn how to play funk music, I think that all those records, the classic recordings, James Brown recordings, that you should have in your collection and you should be studying and listen to. Because really, the whole roots of what the style, the funk style of playing, what everybody calls funk, which, it's a lot of different things, that style sort of comes from that. And great drummers, Zig Modellist with the meters, what a great drummer. I listened to so many of his recordings. Melvin Parker, that used to play with James Brown, really, really great drummer. There's a lot of guys, but that era, I think, got all of the basic root elements of the funk style, which basically comes down to, just that groove, which is, so important. Let me play you the basic beat of this song, what it sounds like. And it's kind of, I guess, in the hip-hop sort of style. I think in the late 60s and early 70s, it didn't swing, didn't have quite as much of a swing as it has today. Today it's, because jazz and the hip-hop are so, close today. But really, you can play it straight up and down 16th notes, or you can really swing it, and it really, really works good. So this is kind of my version of what that beat is, the Clyde Stubblefield type of groove. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. I think that also a good way to practice things like that is to, and I got this from, the next thing I'm going to talk about here is from a teacher that I had from the Bay Area. His name was Chuck Brown. And Chuck is a great teacher in the San Francisco Bay Area who taught a lot of different guys. And Chuck taught me bass. He was the first guy that really explained and got me into hand technique. He really was the first guy that did that. All of the stuff that I was doing with Tower Power, I was already doing all those things when I went to him, and he helped open me up in terms of like a jazz kind of a concept, hand technique, how to make everything real clean, and he really helped me to take all of the rough edges off everything and turn it from sounding really raw to something really, really polished, and it was because of a lot of the exercises and things that I learned from him technically. What he used to do was, of course, all you Chuck Brown students will remember this, but we had this block of wood that we used to have to, it was like a science project he'd have us do. Chuck, I hope you're checking this out. It was this block of wood, and we'd take a piece of rubber, and we would put the piece of rubber, glue it to the top of this pad. I guess it was about the size of a 50-cent piece. Was it less? Maybe it was a quarter. Let's say 50-cent piece. I can't remember now. And so this was chained to us during the time. Don't get offended, Chuck. This is the time, during the time I was studying with him, I was chained to this thing. And all the exercises that I learned from him, I had to play for 5 minutes without stopping. We used the stick control book, you know, George Lawrence Stone's stick control book, and stayed on the first page of stick control, going up the metronome as quarter notes, back down, then to come up at eighth notes, and then go back up again 16th, the whole thing. It took a long, long time to get up and down the metronome. And we would just do the first page and just do those exercises over and over again. And the whole idea was to develop strength and endurance and concentration and discipline so that you could concentrate and the groove wouldn't waver. So we say we would have, I don't know, 10 exercises, right? We would have to play each of those exercises for 5 minutes without stopping and then move to the next one. If you've ever tried to sit down and concentrate on something for 2 minutes without your mind going somewhere else, and it's really a chore. But 5 minutes, and I'll tell you, I could, after studying with him for a while, I could sit down and play for 5 or 6 hours practicing on a pad. I could do that with absolutely no problem at all because it taught me how to concentrate and how to block everything else out. And I think that's like a key element in really the good groove, is to be able to concentrate to the end that it's just all blocked out and you just have this pulse thing that's going on. And if you take any of these grooves that you practice, some of your own things or whatever, and you apply that same concept to them, where you practice them, say, for 5 minutes without stopping, really concentrate on keeping it nice and even. You know, time, I mean, it's going to be fairly elastic when you play. I mean, sometimes sections of a tune will speed up, sometimes things will slow down a little bit. I think that's okay, because that's just part of the human element of playing. But pretty much, it's that straight line, and if you can visualize that straight line when you play, it really, really helps you. Then the 5 minutes, maybe pick 2 or 3 different kind of grooves that you want to play, and then just go from one to the next. 5 minutes on one, 5 minutes on the next. Don't stop, and just make it a really nice routine. Next thing you know, you're playing for 20 or 30 minutes without stopping, and it does incredible things to you. I mean, it's like, you know, if you can go out and run for 30 minutes, it's the same thing. It builds you sort of in a way that running would do, I guess. You could liken it to that. The second groove that I play in the song, again, is during the flute solo, and it's really the only time that I change the basic thing that's going on, and it sounds like this. 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay, we took a little break and I figured out how to play it slow. So here is that same groove slowed down, and I'll try to, you know, play on my leg a little bit so you can hear some of the parts, how it works. And it sounds like this. But remember, the 2 really important elements to make this thing work is you have to really get the real tight swing on it, and then you have to have all the unaccented notes in your snare as low as you can get them. Then all of that nice texture in between the accented notes is there. So here, let's try to see what happens. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. That's pretty much all there is to this piece. Thanks.